Members, today we celebrate LGBT Pride Month on the floor of the Assembly. We celebrate the accomplishments of a diverse and talented group of honorees whose contributions to fields as diverse as the arts and healthcare advocacy, from civic life to civil rights, have made richer the life and spirit of all Californians. We celebrate the spirit of inclusion, acceptance, and hope that animates our community. And we use this occasion to look back on the history of the LGBT community in America, to reconnect ourselves to the past, to use that connection to reaffirm our belief in a brighter, more inclusive future for all of us. Pride ceremonies are generally held in June. Many of us participated in the Los Angeles Pride ceremony a few weeks ago, and many more will participate in San Francisco Pride this coming weekend. I mention those two events because the celebrations in Los Angeles and San Francisco were amongst the first in our nation, and they were held for a very specific reason: to commemorate the Stonewall riots that began on June 28, 1969. Today, we remember Stonewall as a moment when the LGBT movement exploded into national consciousness, as LGBT people finally demanded to be recognized as a rightful part of we the people. Stonewall was not the beginning of the LGBT movement, but it was a turning point, a moment where all of the previous efforts from the first explicitly LGBT organizations like the Mattachine Society and the first candidates who preceded Harvey Milk and Elaine Noble became a galvanizing force for our movement at the forefront of American life. Before Stonewall, LGBT people were forced to lead invisible lives. Fear of exposure by police raids, by photos on the front page of a newspaper, or even through vicious innuendo, served as a powerful deterrent to keep LGBT people in the closet and out of the public eye. Establishments like the Stonewall Inn or the Black Cat in Los Angeles existed in the margins. And in the first night of those riots, it was the people most marginalized by society who reached that critical mass of frustration and anger and fought back. They couldn't know that their refusal to cooperate peacefully, to accept the public shaming of being hauled off to jail simply for trying to live their lives honestly and openly, would inspire such a profound change in society. In fact, previous efforts to push back like those at the Black Cat never captured the same public attention. All they knew was that enough was enough and that it was time to fight back. This Saturday marks the 45th anniversary of that sweltering June night in New York. And the years and decades since, we know we've made tremendous progress. But the progress only underscores the work that remains to be done in building a more inclusive, accepting society. And today's ceremony itself is a reminder of that work. When Mr. Amiano and I resurrected this Pride ceremony in 2009 after a 3-year hiatus, we were especially motivated by the fact that the celebration would coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. This would mark the resumption of the legislation's commemoration of Pride Month, which had been suspended in 2006. That year, the ceremony was marred by massive walkouts and refusals of members of this body to be respectful towards the honorees and the colleagues for whom the Pride Month celebrations were deeply personal. Mr. Amiano and I were determined to move forward to resurrect the observation of Pride Month on this floor, not because we wished to be provocative. And with the legal challenges to Prop 8 pending in those months, the possibility of a similar disruption was real. But our motivation was that LGBT Pride Month itself is at its core about standing up and reminding everyone that LGBT citizens are a part of the great tapestry of American life, worthy of being honored and celebrated as we celebrate so many others on the floor of this body. That year, 25 members of this chamber stood up and walked out and refused to take part in the celebration. When you look at all the full seats in this House tonight, it really speaks to the progress that we've made as a body. And I want to thank all my colleagues for being here and taking part in this celebration. Stonewall happened in New York, but the spirit of Stonewall was given its fullest expression and irreversible momentum here in California. And we see the results of that momentum in so many ways from this rostrum provided over by our very own Madam Speaker. To the men and women of our caucus, to the people of every corner of the state who live their lives openly with dignity and pride. Today's ceremony is a profound opportunity for us to look back at the gains we've made and the long and often difficult struggles to arrive at this moment of history. Long before Harvey Milk was elected to the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, and long before our former colleague Sheila Kuehl was elected to the Assembly 20 years ago this year, LGBT trailblazers put their names on ballots and in a very real sense risked their lives to ensure that our community would have a seat at the table. We honored one such individual in 2009, the first openly gay candidate in California history, Jose Sarria. He was a towering figure in the community, one who refused to be silenced, who insisted on being treated as a fully equal citizen, equally comfortable in his Army uniform as he was singing gold standards in full drag. When we lost him a year ago, our sorrow was tempered by the knowledge that he died knowing that he lived to see a world where members of his community could serve as Speaker of the state legislature, that marriage rights had been secured by the Supreme Court of the United States, and that in so many ways we've made progress unimaginable to him when he walked into the elections office all those decades ago to put his name on the ballot. And as we reflect on the gains that we've made, we know that California has been a driving force behind our national move towards inclusion and acceptance. We defeated the Briggs Initiative and Anita Bryant's effort to introduce a new McCarthyism in American life. We led the nation in combating AIDS and HIV during the worst years of the pandemic. We established groundbreaking policies like domestic partnership and created enormous momentum for marriage equality. That work continues this day, most poignantly with respect to protecting the rights and opportunities of the transgender community. We are driving the national debate and setting the national standard on this crucial civil rights frontier. Transgender Californians face significant barriers in their day-to-day lives, and it's our duty to stand up and ensure that they're treated with dignity, respect, and justice. Whether in the classroom or at work, ensuring that they're treated as fully equal and deserving citizens is the work of justice, and that work must be done. Particularly, we should be proud of the work that this body has done, led by Mr. Amiano's legislation last year, which inspired similar efforts in other states around the country. The story of the LGBT community in California is a wonderful example of the wisdom of Dr. King, who once said that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires the struggles and sacrifice and tireless exertion of passionate concern of countless individuals. We celebrate some of those individuals today. We're privileged to serve with one of those individuals as well, who started with Harvey Milk and has been a powerful voice for us over the decades. Mr. Amiano, thank you for your decades and decades of leadership. And we continue to work towards our goal of justice every single day and continue the painstaking work of building a society where every person, every member of our community is embraced and accepted and respected as fully equal citizens and fully worthy individuals. We know there's much more work to do. We know that in a majority of states across our country, people can be fired simply for being gay or lesbian. And in the overwhelming majorities of states across our country, individuals can be fired simply for being, transgender individuals can be fired simply for being who they are. We cheered when President Obama announced his executive order to prohibit discrimination against the LGBT communities by employers in federal contracting, recalling as it did Franklin Roosevelt's Executive Order 8802 of 1941, which prohibited race-based discrimination in federal government and the defense industry. But we remember that it would take another 2 decades before President Roosevelt's executive order would extend to every corner of the job market with the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And that knowledge underscores the need for us to keep fighting for a trans-inclusive employment non-discrimination act at the federal level. This is not an abstract issue. We cannot treat it as an abstract issue. A recent study showed that 53% of Americans who identify as LGBT are closeted in their workplaces. And even under this dome, where some of the most powerful, most forward-thinking legislation protecting the rights of the LGBT community has been debated, passed, and signed into law, there are scores of staffers in this building who will look at that statistic and see a reflection of their own life. Not that they fear their current employment necessarily, but rather that their future prospects will be harmed by living their lives openly. That's why it's so important for us to commemorate Pride Month on this floor, to pay respect to the contributions of such outstanding Californians. Because this celebration is not just about where we've come as a community, and it's not just about rededicating ourselves to the work that lies ahead. And it's not just about celebrating the intrinsic worth of every person in our community, though each of those are inextricably linked to why we celebrate Pride on this floor today. In the broadest sense, celebrating Pride Month is about celebrating the things that make our nation great, a spirit of inclusion for everyone, a society that recognizes and respects the intrinsic worth of each individual. Today's ceremony is not about our differences. It's about our commonalities and those powerful ideas that bind each of us together as Americans. In celebrating Pride, we celebrate the oldest tradition of our state and our country, and we recommit ourselves to nourishing the spirit of justice for every person in our society. Thank you.